Hello, welcome to video number 2 about pivot tables. In this video we will discuss adding and using a pivot chart to our pivot table. The pivot table in front of us is the pivot table we created in video number 1. So in the video number 1 I had at the last few minutes applied a top 10 items filter. So I will reapply that filter, and now we only see the airlines with the top 10 highest passenger counts at San Francisco International Airport. Now this data still shows that there are significant differences between the different airlines. So we may want to further analyze this, and a good way to do that might be to visualize the data using a pivot chart. Now to use a pivot chart, we will add the pivot chart using the PivotChart command on the Analyze tab of the PivotTable Tools ribbon. The pivot chart will be linked to the pivot table, which means that if I add or remove filters from my pivot table, that will be reflected in the pivot chart and vice versa. The Insert Chart command suggests a clustered column as the chart type. However, because my series data, my categories on the horizontal axis are dates, I will choose to use a line chart instead. Click OK, and there's my pivot chart. I'll move it around and make it slightly larger to make it easier to work with. We can see that we have the same airlines selected that were available in our pivot table at this time. These are the top 10 airlines by passenger count operating San Francisco International Airport. If I change this filter, for example, to make it the top 5 airlines, not only does the pivot table change, the pivot chart also changes. One thing you will note is that United Airlines, both before and after the merger with Continental, are very, very large in terms of passenger count at San Francisco International Airport. It somewhat skews the chart. So we might want to remove the values for United Airlines from the chart and keep only the top 10 airlines or the top 5 airlines excluding United. It seems simple enough to do. After all, I can go in the column label and uncheck United Airlines. Click OK. Unfortunately, doing this has also removed my value filter. The value filter was automatically turned off after I have selected United Airlines. I can reapply the value filter, but that reselects United Airlines. So we seem to be at a bit of a catch-22. What needs to happen is that I need to change a pivot table option that will allow me to set multiple filters for a single field. That's done in the Options dialog box for the pivot table. In the Totals and Filters tab, check the box to allow multiple filters per field. So I'm back to having filtered to the top 10 airlines by total passenger count. Now I will exclude United from that list and click OK. Now I'm back to the top 10 airlines without United. And the chart looks very different. Of course, the chart could potentially be misleading if you believe that this is a chart showing the top 10 airlines. It's not a chart showing the top 10 airlines. Of course, it's a chart showing the top 12 airlines excluding United. The chart, though, is more usable. It shows us which of these airlines show certain patterns of growth or diminishing passenger counts and so on, without the skew that United Airlines introduced to our chart. And once again, it shows though that the pivot table and the pivot chart are in fact linked together. even when expanding a single year in my pivot table, that will cause that year to be expanded in the pivot chart. That's probably not so useful. As you can see, the chart changes significantly and becomes significantly less useful. Depending on your needs, you might end up copying and pasting the chart into a document or PowerPoint presentation, in which case this won't affect you. So this concludes video number 2, in which you've learned how to add a pivot chart to a pivot table, and learned also how to apply multiple filters to a single pivot table field. Thank you for watching.